Hi everyone, Dr. Liz here. Welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast. I'm glad you're here and hopefully it will help you with your journey along the way. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my adult life. I built an award-winning company that was a household name in South Florida, then sold it, and then focused mainly on my private practice as a psychotherapist, helping people feel better. I specialize in hypnosis techniques for anxiety, sleep, emotional healing, some habit change. All of my experience gives you a unique perspective. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Dr. Liz Bonet, Bonet. Another way is to buy one of the downloads that I have for sale on my website, drlizhypnosis.com, DRLIZ hypnosis.com. I only have a couple up there, but they're really good ones. They've stood the test of time. And if you're looking for some free downloads, subscribe to the newsletter and you'll get free hypnosis downloads to reduce anxiety and to increase emotional stability. You can listen to those immediately. Start helping yourself today. But listen to this episode first before you do that. Another way to support the podcast is to rate and review it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever it is you're listening to it. That always helps me get found by people, which helps me help more people. So you're going to help me help more people. I'm going to wrap this up. Enjoy the episode, and I hope to see you back here soon. Good morning, everyone. My interview today is with Jeremy Lipkowitz, and we're having a conversation about addiction with the focus on porn addiction because he runs a group for porn addiction for men. We talk about more than porn, though. We talk about addiction as a process and also Buddhism as a path to recovery, essentially. I do want to say right here that a lot of women struggle with sex and porn addiction as well, and they tend to hide it even more so than men. There's such shame and repercussions, I would say, for them to speak out about it, even want to attend, let's say, a recovery meeting where they may be the only woman there, and that doesn't feel comfortable or safe to them. So I do want to let people know that there are female-only recovery meetings through SAA and SLAA, and you can go to saa-recovery.org to access some of those, or slaa.org. That will be in the show notes as well. I know the vast majority of my listeners are women, and that's why I'm bringing it up. So if you're facing it yourself versus in a partnership with someone who's facing porn or sex or love addiction, there are resources out there for you. I am thinking of starting a group myself for women with porn and sex addiction specifically, and not a 12-step group, but using Buddhist concepts as a path to recovery. So feel free to reach out to me, Dr. Liz, DRLIZ, at drlizhypnosis.com if you're interested in that. And be at peace, be assured that I would keep your name and communications confidential. If it feels safer to call my work phone and leave a voicemail, that's an option too, 954-309-9071. And you can do that through the U.S. service or on WhatsApp too. I'm on WhatsApp with that number as well for international people. All right, I hope you are healthy and safe, and let's jump into this interview. Peace. Hi, Jeremy. Welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast.
Happy to be here.
Yes, so happy to see your email come across my desk. I think we're going to talk about a really important topic today, and porn addiction. And let's jump in with your own personal story, how you got into this work.
Yeah. So I got into this work just through my own experience with porn addiction. I started watching porn when I was a young boy. I think I first got introduced to porn maybe around 8 or 9 years old, and maybe a little bit before that through things that were sexual media, but not necessarily porn. So for me, it was the lingerie catalogs coming in the mailbox
Mm-hmm.
and certain comic book characters. And I just remember, those kind of being things that activated me. Um, but then, I got access to porn and eventually got access to the internet, dial up
Mm-hmm.
at first, and then at some point, high speed internet. And it slowly escalated. It wasn't anything noticeable day to day, but over time, it just slowly built up and became a deeper and deeper part of my life. And it got to the point where I noticed in college, I was watching it every day, every
Mm-hmm.
night for 1 to 2 hours. I would go into my room, lock the door, and log on to porn sites. And at some point, I woke up to what that was doing to my life, to my relationships, to my well-being and mental health. There
Mm-hmm.
were a lot of things that I noticed, and I'm happy to talk about that if you like.
Yeah,
But I noticed it was a problem.
was
Yeah.
there a critical incident that happened, or is more a couple of things that happened, or over a couple of
Yeah.
years sometimes?
There was one incident that really kind of shined the light on the issue for me and made me realize, hey, this is a problem and I have to change and I can't keep living like this. So for me, I was around 22, 23 years old. I forget exactly how old I was. I had just finished my undergraduate degree at UC Davis. So my background is in the sciences. I was studying genetics and genomics. I'd finished my undergrad degree, but I stuck around on campus for about a year to do research in one of the laboratories. And so I was a young man, 22, 23 years old, living a really good life. I had good grades in school. I had a lot of friends. I had a
Mm-hmm.
kind of an active life and a lot of things to be proud of. And I remember walking down the street one day and seeing these young college women walking in front of me. And I remember being so consumed by this feeling of lust, this
Mm.
feeling of objectifying them, lusting after them. And a few really important things happened to me in that moment. The first was realizing that that experience of lust was a state of suffering.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
when I was looking at what I didn't have and what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
I was not focused on all the amazing things going on around me. I wasn't feeling gratitude for the connections in my life or my friends. I was having tunnel vision, just focused on thinking I need to have that thing. And unless I talk to them or touch them or go watch porn, then I can't be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was this real visceral experience of noticing what a lot of us in recovery know as this void inside of us that we're trying to fill with
Yes.
our substance or behavior. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt that void the moment I lusted after these girls and objectified them. It felt like this big black pit opening up inside of me. And I
Wow.
realized that I was a slave to this lusting behavior.
Uh-huh.
And that every time I lusted, it, made me feel empty inside. So that was the first key insight that I
Yeah,
had
just a
that day.
moment of clarity there.
Yeah, of
Okay.
realizing, hey, my mind is a slave to this behavior, this
Uh-huh.
lusting behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and I am not in control. And it's a miserable way to live life,
Yeah.
focusing on what you don't have. And
Yes.
yeah, and of course, objectifying women, and we can talk about all
Mm-hmm.
that later. But the other really important thing that happened to me that day was I saw the path that I was on. I saw where my behaviors were leading me. And I had this moment. This was probably the most important is I saw my future and I realized if I don't change the way I'm living, if I don't stop watching porn and stop this
Mm-hmm.
objectification and sexualizing every woman I see, if I don't change, I'm going to end up as some 65-year-old man who's hitting on girls at college bars. And I'm gonna be like, I really saw that for myself because I
Right.
was living in a college town, so it was a
Yeah.
small college town in
Mm-hmm.
California, and I realized that, hey, I'm getting older, but I'm
Uh-huh.
still just sexualizing young 18-year-old girls, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized this is a result of the porn that I'm watching because every time I
Oh,
log
yeah.
onto porn, I am ingraining in my mind that what I'm lusting after is 18-year-old girls,
Yeah. If that.
and
Right. What they
yeah,
present to
if
you.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Mm-hmm.
just realized that, on top of just, being a perverted old man at college bars hitting on girls, I
Mm-hmm.
would just be empty inside, chasing relationships, chasing women,
Mm-hmm.
not living a deeply fulfilling, value-driven life of integrity. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized in that moment what I really want is a fulfilling life with fulfilling relationships and a sense of integrity and inner peace. So that moment really shook things up for me because it scared the crap out of me. I mean, it made
Mm-hmm.
me realize, hey, I've really messed up my brain with all this porn that I'm watching and all
Mm-hmm.
the ways that I'm sexualizing everyone that I see.
Yeah.
And so that sent me down this rabbit hole where I started questioning what is happiness and is real happiness even possible?
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going to this bookstore and finding some books on positive psychology and
Mm-hmm.
then some on neuroplasticity. And I found this one book that really blended together kind of Eastern Buddhist philosophy with modern day neuroscience and neuroplasticity. It was a book called Happiness by Metu Ricard, who's a
Mm-hmm.
Tibetan monk. And that book just completely opened up my eyes to first of all, what real happiness is.
Yeah.
That it's not just gratifying all your sense desires and
Yeah.
having more stimulation. It's about practicing compassion and being of service and all
Yes.
these things that we don't focus on. But the more important thing is it taught me about neuroplasticity. And one of the key
Mm.
phrases that I remember reading in that book was this phrase, neurons that fire together wire together.
Yes. A very common phrase in
Yeah.
neuroplasticity. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized that every time I was logging on to a porn site, which again at that point was every night,
Mm-hmm.
unbeknownst to me, like I didn't realize it, but every time I logged on, I was hardwiring in the neural pathways of lust and objectification and suffering.
Mm.
I was the one causing my own suffering. And that was a really groundbreaking moment for me.
Yes. The day before I stepped into my first recovery meeting, my a good friend at the time said to me, "You are now causing your own suffering." That's exactly
Mm,
what she said. Is that phrase because I was suffering so much for so long, and I was like, okay, that was the moment of clarity for me, actually.
yeah. Yeah. When you realize you're the one, causing all the damage, your
Yes.
own
Mm-hmm.
inner saboteur, your own actions
Yes.
is what's doing the damage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So very interesting. It's is was that your first exposure to Buddhism?
Yeah, it was. It was really interesting because for me, I had all these misconceptions about Buddhism. I thought, oh, you have to believe in rebirth and it's all about karma. And I
Mm-hmm.
had all these ideas about what it was. And that book really opened up my eyes to the truth, which is that Buddhism is much more of a philosophy of the mind
Yes.
and a way of training your mind and
Mm-hmm.
cultivating wholesome mind states and
Mm-hmm.
letting go of unwholesome mind states or unskillful mind states. So it made me realize that Buddhism is much more secular than I realized. And it's just
Okay.
a good way to train the mind, which is what I needed
Yeah.
because my mind was out of control. So yeah, it wasn't necessarily my first taste of Buddhism, but it was the
Mm-hmm.
first time I really understood what it actually was about.
Okay, got it. Yeah. I mean, a book often it's a pretty structured way of presenting a system of thinking, really. Like
Yeah.
I love Buddhism. I'm not taking the vow um yet, but I love Buddhism and identify as mainly Buddhist. And so
Mhm.
recently I was listening to, it was either a podcast or something I was reading where they said, like, where did the isms start to come into it? Like it really did used to be called like a system of thinking, right? Like
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
so than, let's say, a religion or philosophy even. And so it was
Totally.
just discussing that concept, which I think when we put the ism on it, sometimes people do, put it in a category, right? Versus
Yeah.
seeing it as something that could be a really useful tool in their lives.
Definitely. I mean, it's so fascinating because the Buddha was just a guy. He
Hmm.
wasn't like, the son of God. He was literally just a guy, just like you
Yeah.
or me. And he just was really curious about his own mind and the way that his mind works and
Hmm.
started working with his mind using some of the tools of meditation. And he figured out how to uproot, you know, his own self-imposed suffering. And it's really that simple, and so
Yes.
that it doesn't matter if you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Hindu or atheist, like you can benefit from Buddhist philosophy because it's just a way of cultivating more genuine happiness.
Yes. Yes, it is. I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So when you decided at that point, but it sounds like a decision came to you too, like I need to stop this behavior or decrease the behavior or something like that. Did you go to recovery as well? Like
No,
sex
it's
and
so,
love
so
addict. Most
fascinating.
people don't even know it exists. There's sex and love addiction
Yeah.
recovery, SAA,
Yeah.
sex Sex Addicts Anonymous. There's SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. Elizabeth Gilbert. I have not read her new book, but apparently she talks about it in her new
Hmm.
book that just came out. This is we're recording this in December of 2025. Just to put that out there for people.
Mhm.
Of it's anonymous, it's free. There's phone meetings, there's video meetings, and depending on where you are, there are in-person meetings. But you didn't know about that at the time, it sounds like.
Yeah, I didn't know, I didn't know about anything recovery or even really addiction related for
Mm.
many years. So my pathway of what I now call recovery and
Uh-huh.
breaking free from my addiction almost had nothing to do with quote unquote traditional recovery or addiction recovery. My
Mhm.
pathway was really through Buddhist meditation, a lot of mindfulness, a lot of going on retreats, ordaining as a monk. Like it was really much more
Oh,
through the
you did ordain
meditative
as a
path.
monk.
Yeah, yeah, in
Oh,
Myanmar.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So for
Fantastic.
me, like Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy just totally changed my life. And I dove
Hmm.
headfirst into that because, as maybe probably a lot of the listeners of your show know, it's not just about porn addiction. It's about everything. I mean, it's not if you're an alcoholic, it's not just about the alcohol. It's about all the ways that we run away from emotions, try to escape, numb
Yes.
out, hide. And
Yes.
it's about, living a more, a deeper life is what recovery really is and Buddhist philosophy really is. And so for me, it just opened up my whole life, where meditation became a really central part of it. And I realized that one of my biggest addictions, among many other addictions, I was addicted to porn, but I was also addicted to validation and
Hmm.
junk food and, all kinds of things.
Hmm.
Porn was one of the biggest ones for me. And so, yeah, it was a
So,
very circuitous route to recovery.
okay, I hear that. Yeah, but I mean, I always say there's all kinds of ways to get sober.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and live in recovery. It's not just getting sober, but live in
Yeah.
recovery and live a life that's full of meaning, that's worth
Hmm.
living. So, I'm trained in dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and the tagline is really like, how do you create a life worth living? She's no longer living, but the original Marsha Linehan creator of that system combined cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, with Buddhism, basically. And so the manuals and the books are full of Buddhist concepts without people really realizing that that's where they came from, unless they really read the history of it.
Yeah.
But it really does focus on how do you create a meaningful life without, people often think it's through substance, whatever that
Hmm.
substance is, or addiction to something, that
Some
validation,
behavior.
people
Yeah.
pleasing, yes, cute perfectionism, that type of thing. The Buddhist, I know they call it the realm of the hungry ghosts. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that some? Because I think it's really relevant here and it just puts it in a different way, I think,
Yeah.
than people typically think about it.
Totally. I mean, it's so funny because when you really go deep into Buddhism, you realize Buddhism really is about addiction recovery. It's like
Yeah.
it's intertwined. It's for addicts essentially,
Hmm.
and you just realize that we're all addicts. Everyone's addicted to something to greater or lesser degrees. But the realm of the hungry ghost it's so funny. I literally just did a podcast episode on it this morning and released it. It's one of my favorite concepts because it really nails what addiction feels like. So, for people who aren't familiar with it, in Buddhist cosmology, Buddhist, philosophy, there are these different realms of existence. There's the human realm, which we live in. There's the heavenly realm where everything is pleasant and wonderful all the time. There's the hell realm where everything is just pain and suffering nonstop. There's the animal realm where it's, animals and primal desires. And then there's this one interesting realm called the realm of hungry ghosts. And it's filled with these creatures, these ghost-like creatures that have these massive bellies, these huge stomachs, and tiny pinhole mouths or these very narrow throats. And so they wander this existence with a huge amount of hunger, but their mouths are so small that they can never eat enough to satisfy their hunger.
Mm.
So they
Mm-hmm.
wander their existence just constantly hungry and never feeling satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what it feels like to be an addict. It's like
Yes.
you're just always hungry for more. And no
Yes.
matter how much you eat, no matter how much you ingest or shoot
Mm-hmm.
up or whatever you do, it never feels like it satisfies that craving.
Yeah.
It's so apt for addiction. It really nails
Right,
it.
right. Yeah, the
Yeah.
image is very striking to me. It really is.
Yeah.
For, people who are more visual, which I am. It's like it's very,
Yeah.
very striking. Uh,
Yeah.
wow, just never being filled up, really. If you
Never
continue to
satisfied.
pursue that
Yeah.
addictive substance, again, substance, quote unquote, if you continue to pursue that addiction.
And important for people to know it's not just substances.
Yeah,
Behaviors as well.
right.
Any behavior can be addictive. Anything that gives you comfort or
Yes.
pleasure
Mm-hmm.
and makes you numb out or escape or temporarily,
Mm-hmm.
fill the void can be an addictive behavior. So for people listening to this, it's not just porn, it's not just
Right.
alcohol. It
Mm-hmm.
can, people can get addicted to validation and success. People can get addicted to money.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise can be an addiction. Like really anything can become
Yes.
an addiction. So we have to really look at the way we're relating to these things.
Yes. Recently I heard the term misery stabilizer. And
Interesting.
isn't that great? It's from Terry Real. He's big in the couples world. And so I was reading about this in the couples therapy kind of realm of a misery stabilizer is something that you use to numb out, and it could be a game on your phone. It could be an actual, like, outside kind of addiction. It could be anything, who knows. Where it's like you're numbing out, you think you're protecting yourself. Like ultimately, we're all trying to protect ourselves in some way, but really you're stabilizing the misery in your relationship
Hmm.
instead of
Hmm.
being present. Present for happiness, joy, present for repair, present for maybe problems you need to fix. You're numbing out. And so they call it a misery stabilizer.
Hmm.
And I think that's just such a wonderful like term. It captures it. Of like,
Yeah.
yeah, that could be anything, like you're saying. But ultimately, if you're using it to not be present in your life, then you're just continuing the misery. You're sort of like trying to push it down the road, right? Like, I'm going to get this
Hmm.
temporary relief, but really you're creating more misery down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Because often, whatever we resist persists, right? Like that's such a common phrase. And the more we resist it or push it under the rug, it just comes back stronger. And
Yes.
unless you learn how to relate to it in a healthier way, which again, a lot of Buddhist practices are around healthy relating to uncomfortable emotions, unpleasant
Yes.
emotions. Yeah.
Yes. Um, so talk some about what Buddhism recommends for, well, I don't even know if I would say recommends, right? But let's talk about some of the pathways out of addiction, out of craving, out of that suffering. I mean, most people think about meditation, right, as
Mhm.
a pathway out of that. Is that where you would recommend people start, or what would you say?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really depends on what somebody is dealing with. For somebody out there, it could be that if they're dealing with porn addiction, whether they're a man or a woman,
Mm-hmm.
it can be there for both sexes, both genders. So whether they're struggling with porn addiction, substance abuse, or kind of just your everyday, uncomfortable emotions, sadness, grief,
Mm-hmm.
Frustration, stress, and anxiety. So when it comes to recovery, if somebody's in some kind of recovery, whether it's a full-blown addiction or just a bad habit that they want to kick,
Mm-hmm.
practicing mindfulness and cultivating that mental muscle of mindfulness is one of the best things you can do. It's one of the fastest, most effective things you can do for recovery because it gives you the ability to start to work with what's going on in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
which is where the addiction is happening. And so mindfulness is a superpower there. It gives you the ability to pause before reacting, to
Mm-hmm.
notice when a strong emotion is arising, and then the ability to actually choose differently. If you don't
Yes.
have any mindfulness, one of my favorite quotes is, you probably heard this from Viktor Frankl: between stimulus and response, there's a space.
Yes.
And in that space is your power to choose your response. And
Yes.
in your response lies your growth and your freedom.
Mm.
So for everyone out there, between stimulus and response, between something happening in your life and you responding, there is space there. But if you don't have access to that space, there's a stimulus and a reaction. And usually
Yes.
the reaction is based off of preconditioned habits of avoidance or fear or
Mm-hmm.
fight, flight, or freeze, or some not necessarily skillful coping mechanism. But if you have awareness and some stimulus happens, you actually get the ability to pause in that space and say, okay, how do I want to react in this moment? Do I
Mm-hmm.
want to run away and hide? Do I want to lash out and write a nasty email? Do I want to open up the porn site and numb out?
Yeah.
Or do I want to choose differently?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to have a conversation with this person? Do I want to sit with my sadness or take a nap? There's so many ways
Yeah.
of living more skillfully, but we need that ability to choose in the moment because otherwise you're just, you know, trying to play catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's taking that pause to choose how to show up because we do have those habitual patterns, right? One of my habitual patterns is to go to anger and revenge, right? That's the fantasy in my mind. Like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. Ding, like Kali, like, watch this.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I pause, I don't really want to show up that way. I know that's going to create shame later for me. And I'm going to feel really
Yeah.
bad about myself and shameful. And then, like, oh man, I'm like the worst person in the world, and I don't want to be in that state. Actually, recently, I've listening to Pima Chadron's book, actually, a couple of them. But anyway, she talks about Shimpa,
Mm-hmm.
that
I love
concept
it.
of like what goes on in your mind. And she's
Yeah.
answering a question where someone says, I'm having shimp at parties, basically, in my mind. I laugh and
Yeah.
laugh because it's like, oh, yeah, I got him. I got him. I'm there. I'm at the shimp at party where those thoughts start forming, those reactions, those habitual patterns start forming. And then the pause for me, I'm actually counting to 90 seconds back to the neuroplasticity. Some researcher came up with like, oh, that addictive thought or that addictive pattern only lasts for 90 seconds in your mind. And for me, I was like, well, that's 90 seconds and then another 90 seconds and then another 90 seconds. So it's like, that's not very helpful until I started counting to 90. I was like, okay, I'm going to create this pause here by counting to 90, like really picturing the numbers, like trying to put all of my attention there because if I don't, all this stuff can run in the background while I'm counting to 90. And this is just an audio interview, but if you could see my hands, they're sort of in a swirl here. They're creating the hurricane, right? They're creating that tornado. So it's like, all right, back to mindfulness. It's like I'm really going to mindfully concentrate and count to 90 to create that pause about how do I want to show up? What do I want to create? Do I want to create compassion? Do I want to create kindness? Do I want to create connection with somebody? So for me, it's like that's been really helpful, that pause. And, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people hear meditation, they'll say, I can't do that. I can only
Mm-hmm.
make it 90 seconds. We're talking about the 90 seconds, right? What do you recommend for like the ADD world where they're like, I can't meditate?
Yeah. A lot of it is based on misconceptions of what it means to meditate. I mean, it's the same if somebody says, "Oh, I can't go do a yoga class because I'm not flexible,"
Yeah.
or "I can't I
Right.
can't go to the gym because I'm not strong,"
Uh-huh.
or "I can't take a Spanish class because I don't speak Spanish." And they're missing the point that
Right,
like the
right.
point of doing these practices is to get better at those things. And
Yes.
so
Hmm.
if your mind is all over the place, that's fine. I mean, that's the place we all start at, and
Hmm.
it's also just a natural human condition. Even if somebody's been meditating for 40 years, their mind will
Hmm.
still jump around. It's called the monkey mind in
Yes.
Buddhism. It just goes everywhere.
Hmm.
So getting, you know, out of this idea that you have to be a quote unquote good meditator and have a stable mind in order to meditate. Because it's not even really about concentration. That's the other thing people mistake a lot. A lot of people think a good meditation is one where I'm concentrated.
Hmm.
I follow the breath and I can, count to 90 or any of these
Hmm.
things. And that is what some kinds of meditations are about, but it's not what mindfulness meditation is about. So
Hmm.
mindfulness is one particular style or technique of meditation, and it's distinct from concentration-based meditation. So many people have heard of transcendental meditation.
Yeah.
That is a kind of meditation where you're repeating a mantra, and the
Hmm.
point is to be concentrated. But what Buddhist meditation is, the Buddha, one of the things he was kind of really revolutionary with was understanding and developing this concept of mindfulness. And it has nothing to do with concentration. It's about the way you're relating to what's happening in your experience.
Mm.
So you could be totally lost in thought and have one moment of really noticing an emotion that's arising. And if you can really be present with it in this non-judgmental, clear-seeing, kind-hearted way, that's a solid moment of mindfulness. And then
Hmm.
your mind might go all over the place for another 20 minutes, and then it might land just for a brief moment on another moment of awareness. And that's good mindfulness.
Hmm.
So that's one other thing that can really help people. It's like you don't have to have a lot of concentration. Your mind can jump all over the place. It's about how, well, first of all, what you're noticing and how you're relating to what you're noticing. That's what mindfulness is really about.
Hmm. Okay. So then, um, in your work with people, I mean, do you start there with them?
It's a big foundation of the work I do with a lot of my clients and with a lot of the
Okay.
guys that I work with is having some foundation in meditation, in mindfulness, just because it's so
Hmm.
transformative for all the other work of recovery.
Hmm.
Recovery, there's a lot of different tools in recovery, right? There's a lot
Yes.
of different things, taking ownership, sitting with difficult emotions,
Yes.
making amends, all kinds of things that we have to do in recovery, that are
Hmm.
challenging.
Hmm.
Mindfulness supercharges all those things and gives you a really solid foundation. So I do, implement that pretty early on with the work that I do with people.
Hmm. Okay.
That being said, another big component of the work that I do with guys, particularly around sex addiction and addiction, is being in community and learning how
Hmm.
to let go of sexual shame. I mean,
Hmm.
shame in general is a big topic in addiction,
It
but
is.
it's even more of an issue in sex addictions and porn addiction.
Hmm.
There's so much, sexual shame that we have in our society of thinking, oh, I'm perverted, I'm broken. If people knew, it's like
Yeah.
somebody can go to a party and say, hey, I'm an alcoholic in recovery, I'm 5 years sober, and people will say, oh, good job, we're proud of you.
Yeah.
If you go to a party and say, hey, I'm recovering porn addict,
Hmm.
it doesn't get the same response,
Oh,
because
yeah.
there is that
Right. Yes.
sexual kind of taboo and stigma.
Yes.
And so a big part of the work that I do with guys is helping them let go of sexual shame. And part of
Hmm.
that is being in community,
Okay.
learning it's okay and realizing I'm not alone. There
Hmm.
are other people who struggle with this.
Yes. Yeah. There's a couple of reactions I had when you said that. And one is a memory of someone saying, "Why would I not want to be a sex addict?" You know, like, like that would be a response you might get, right? Whereas nobody
Totally.
would be like, "Why would I not want to be an alcoholic?" Although sometimes when you actually talk to an alcoholic, they are saying that, right? Like, why would I
Yeah.
want to give up partying and, a really good time and until the negative consequences start to hit them.
Right.
Or there was someone once who said, well, I think this is just a phase I'm going through after
Mm.
divorce. Like all of
Mm.
this sexual activity, multiple partners a day, this type of thing. So it's like, how do you, for the listeners, if they're facing it themselves or if they're in relationship with someone with a partner, how do you really differentiate between something that tips over into addiction? Let's say sometimes there's problem behavior, right? And then it
Hmm.
tips over. There seems to be a tipping point over into
Yeah.
addiction. But how do you differentiate that? And the second part of that question is like, how would you address that with a partner if you feel like this is going on, or would you?
Yeah. It's a spectrum, and on one far side of the spectrum, we have healthy sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
a very healthy engagement with vibrant sex life. And on the far end of the other side of the spectrum is, very deep sex addiction and problematic behavior. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things are in the middle where it's not necessarily destroying someone's life,
Mm-hmm.
but it is causing a lot of problems in their relationship, problems at work. It's very problematic.
Mm-hmm.
It's holding them back from real happiness, real contentment in their relationship. So, just for people to understand, it's not a yes or no. Hey, you are an
Yeah.
addict, you're a sex addict, or no, you're totally fine. A
Yeah.
lot of it is the nuance of it, of saying, how is this bringing benefit to my life, or how is it harming me? And
Okay.
looking at it holistically and saying, do the harms of this behavior outweigh the benefits?
Mm-hmm.
And so for porn addiction, that's a really important question because a lot of people aren't aware of the consequences. They're not
Yeah.
aware of the ways that it harms themselves, the people in their life, their relationships, or society.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people think, hey, there's no problem here. What's the
Mm-hmm.
problem with watching porn? Because I'm not harming anyone. But they don't see the way that it's impacting their life. And so, first of all, just understand that it is a spectrum and it's not about am I a sex addict or not? It's to what degree is this harming my life and to what degree is this
Yeah.
bringing benefit? That's
Yeah.
a better
To what
question.
degree are you suffering with it?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
what I would say, what degree is it taking over your life? Like,
Yeah.
is start to become a constant process of thinking about it and planning for it and
Yeah. And that's where we start to look more at getting clarity on how is it impacting your life, where
mhm,
gaining some self-awareness, doing some journaling, getting feedback from people in your life where you say, what are the ways this is impacting my life? And a lot of it is around the ways that it can be consuming in terms of time and energy. It
mhm,
can be taking away, your sexual energy that you might be channeling into your relationship, and instead you're just channeling it into pixels on a screen.
mhm.
It can be altering your perception of what sex is supposed to look like and what healthy intimacy looks like, because
Yes.
porn is a fantasy and
Yes,
it's highly it's the most clickbaity stuff out there. And
it is.
so it starts to warp people's expectations of what sex is,
Mhm.
expectations of what their partner's bodies are supposed to look like.
Yes.
Um,
There's a t-shirt, Porn Kills Love,
yeah.
that it does start to warp expectations of what intimate relationships are, how people should look and behave, and what they should do, and how they should react. And yeah,
Hmm.
warps all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of porn out there is, quite violent,
Yes.
misogynistic. I mean, it's not the porn of the 1970s that was,
Yeah,
like
it's not
like you
right.
open a Playboy magazine and it's a model laying on a couch. It's a very
Right.
different thing. I mean, it's
It is.
a lot of people kind of make the analogy of my grandparents or my parents smoked weed back in the 70s,
Hmm.
and they're fine. And it's like the difference between porn back then and porn now is like the difference between weed from 1970 and fentanyl today.
Yeah.
It's a
Agreed.
different kind of
It
substance.
is.
It's not
Yeah.
it's not the same thing because it's highly addictive. It's highly
Hmm.
accessible, it's affordable, it's
Yeah.
incredibly novel,
Hmm.
hyper stimulant. So for people to be aware, like there's a lot of ways it can impact your life and to start to address that question. And so if someone's out there saying, "Hey, do I have a problem?" It
Hmm.
would be to look at it and say, on the whole, is it causing more harm in your life than it's doing good? And if that's the case, you could classify it as an addiction. Because an addiction is anything that you repeatedly do despite the harm that it's causing in your life.
Yeah. True. Okay. There's also a quiz. If you like to take quizzes, there's a quiz at saa-recovery.org that people could take. It lists some actions there that are going on and it lets you know, like, hey, you should maybe take a look at this. So
Mm.
let's say that you feel like your partner has a problem. In your
Mhm.
opinion, what would you do about that, if anything?
Yeah. So let's just take the kind of heteronormative perspective of a female,
Okay.
talking about her male partner having, suspecting her male partner has a problem because that's the most common. It's not, sometimes it's reversed, it
Hmm.
can be all kinds of combinations. But
Yeah.
um, let's say, you're someone in a relationship and you think your partner has a problem. How do you bring it up? The best thing, most important, would be to approach it first in a safe, non-judgmental way of opening up the conversation about the topic. Finding ways to have the conversation around, understanding, do they watch porn?
Hmm.
What is their porn habit? Because for a lot of guys, it is the most shameful, sensitive thing in their life. It's something that they've been hiding since they were 6 or 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They've done it in secret their entire life and they're incredibly ashamed of it and they can get very defensive. And so finding a way to open up the conversation and broach the topic in a safe way, in a non-judgmental way, that has the best chance of success.
Okay.
To just kind of gain information, like, do
Hmm.
you watch porn? How do you feel about it? Um, if we're talking about the situation where a partner has tried to have that conversation or has even said, "Hey, I think you're watching porn behind my back," and the partner is denying it,
Hmm.
that's a really tricky situation, because that's what addiction does. It causes people to lie and hide and betray.
Yeah.
And if a man doesn't want to get help,
Hmm.
there's not a whole lot that you can do as the partner if he's not willing to take ownership of it.
Hmm.
Um, you know, you could send him resources, podcasts like the one that I have, which is all about kind of a non-judgmental approach to overcoming porn addiction, so that
Hmm.
he can be aware of, hey, there are other guys who are being honest about this, breaking free from this, talking about the ways that it's harming. Um, that could also help, but it's a very tricky subject to talk about. It takes
Yeah.
two adults, mature adults, to come together.
Uh-huh. Okay. Um, can you say the name of your podcast?
Yeah, it's called Unhooked.
Unhooked. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. How long has it been running?
Since 2021, so about 4 years now,
Wow,
something around there.
fantastic. Great.
Yeah,
And is it
yeah,
about all about porn addiction or is you do various topics?
yeah. It's loosely centered around porn addiction, but because my approach is, more about unhooking from compulsive bad habits, it's less about the
Hmm.
porn itself. And so sometimes we talk about social media addiction or
Yeah.
substance abuse, recovery in general. We also
Uh-huh.
get into neuroscience and neuroplasticity and Buddhist philosophy and therapy. So
Uh-huh.
it's quite a wide ranging one, but
Yeah.
with a general focus on, helping guys with porn addiction.
Okay.
But
All right.
as people in recovery know, it's all interrelated.
It is.
Addiction to alcohol is very similar to addiction to porn. It has
Yeah.
differences in certain things, but there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah. They often say like food and sex, food addiction and sex addiction often go together.
Yeah,
They
especially
pair.
both of those, there's a lot of similarities because you can't just completely be sober from sexuality. or
Right.
from
Or
food.
food. Right.
You have to learn how to be in a healthy relationship with them, and
Yes,
that's
it's
a
process
tricky thing.
addictions. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and I think that does, it has a different flavor to it sometimes than like, let's say something that's not a process addiction, like you can stop drinking alcohol, period. You
Hmm.
can stop watching porn, period. But you can't, um, stop being a sexual creature, let's say. You can stop using heroin. There's a yes or no there, period. But yeah, the process addictions are sometimes really difficult for people to navigate, particularly in early sobriety, and figure out like, what is it? What is my sobriety? What feels good? What feels like a healthy relationship? And that's years that takes to figure that out, not just like a moment, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the beautiful side of that is that the more you get into things like process addictions, the more you get to see the subtle layers of addiction and how
Mhm.
we're all addicts, whether it's just the addiction to being liked, the addiction to getting validation, just those very subtle ways that we're addicted to wanting things to be the way we want them to be.
Mhm. Yes, true. Well, we're coming to the end of our time here. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Like, genuinely, I hope this helps someone out there. And again, your podcast is Unhooked, and also tell people other ways to find you.
The best way would be just to find the podcast Unhooked. I mean, there's so many resources on there, and if you're interested in this topic, or getting to know more about the work that I do, like that's the best place. Whether you listen to it on YouTube or podcast platform. If you want to learn more about the group program that I run for men around this in particular, you can just visit unhookedacademy.com. That's the group program that I run for men.
Okay. Do you do individual work as well, or just group?
Yeah, I also take on one-on-one clients, but
You
it's
do.
a limited number, small number of one-on-one
Okay.
clients.
So your
Yeah.
focus is more on recovery groups for men.
Yeah, it's on both. I
Okay.
do the one-on-one work and the group, but my client load is full. I'm very grateful.
Uh-huh.
It's not always full, so if you're interested in that, definitely you can find more information on the website Unhooked Academy. But the group work, it's so accessible and it's
Mhm.
it's so powerful in overcoming this that even the people that I work with one-on-one, they join the group as well and get a lot of benefit out of that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Really, it's such an important topic that we need to just have more conversations about because it's so pervasive.
Agreed. I hope you truly enjoyed today's episode. I work all over the world doing hypnosis, so if you're interested in working with me, please schedule a free consultation over at my website, drlizhypnosis.com, and we'll see what your goals are and if I can be of service to you in helping you reach them. Finally, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast or tell a friend. That way, more and more people learn about the power of hypnosis. This podcast is not mental health treatment, nor should it replace mental health treatment. If you need therapy or hypnotherapy, please seek treatment from a trained professional, such as myself. Have a wonderful week. Peace.